What is up, everybody? Josh Tapp here again, and welcome back to the Lucky Titan. And today we're here with Glenn Hopper. Now, this guy, when they reached out to me, I was actually really intrigued by what he sent me. I think it was his agent that sent me his information, and it really sparked my interest because this guy comes at entrepreneurship and startups from a finance perspective. And he's a 20-year career of being with multiple startups, being an angel investor, doing some amazing things in the space. But I love how he comes at it from that angle of finance. I know a lot of the questions we get from you guys are like, how do I actually, financially manage my company? Because if there's no cash flow coming in, it doesn't matter if you're making millions and you're not profiting, you're not moving. So I'm excited to have Glenn here today to really talk with us about this, to share his story, and get us going here. So Glenn, first off, say what's up to everybody and we'll hop in.
I'm going to do this just because I've heard some of your other guests. I'm going to completely just blow professionalism out of the window, and I'm going to say, "What's up?
What's up?" Yeah. Perfect. That's what we need. Most everybody knows this. They watch the show. I have zero professionalism, so you're totally welcome to that.
Oh, good. I'm in the right place then.
You're in the right place. We're your people here.
Yeah.
I never show up with a suit, man. I'm either in a hoodie or in a t-shirt. People know that about us. Okay, Glenn. So I want to ask you first, obviously, about that epiphany moment for you. So at what point did you realize that startups were your jam, that they were your place?
Yeah. I mean, it's for me, I was in the Navy and very early in my career. And when I got out of the Navy and finished business school, I had a couple of different paths, and I thought, I was a journalist in the Navy, which is a strange profession to have, but it kind of led me into marketing. And
I honestly didn't even know that existed. So I'm glad.
Yeah, it doesn't anymore. They've actually done away with the job. I guess they outsource it, but it was cool while it lasted.
Yeah.
So, but so I was getting out of the Navy, and I had my my master's in business, and I was looking at three career paths. One would have been, this is in the late 90s. One would have been, I could have been the editor of a newspaper for their online website. So this is, still pretty new, Web 1.0, definitely. So I could have stayed in journalism, gone that route. I could have gone to work at a marketing agency. And the last one was, there was a telecommunications startup that only had, I don't know, 100 employees at the time. And they were, I didn't know anything about telecommunications at the time or startups, but when I went for the interview, they talked about an equity position, and they were calling everybody partners. And this was in the .com bubble era. And so it had the cool factor that the other jobs didn't. And it was, as a finance guy, you normally want to be conservative in everything you do, but it's funny that I can be conservative with financials, but with the business choices I make, I'm just like a degenerate gambler going from one startup to the next. But it's, you only go to the ones you believe in. You only do the ones you believe in. And back then I didn't even know what to look for, but I knew it was a cool opportunity, and there was an opportunity for some equity and to do something fun. And really, once I got in there and I watched it grow, and back then I was employee number, I don't know what, 90 something, or I can't remember exactly what it was, but I was in that first 100, and you saw other employees come, and you wore your employee number like a badge of honor that you were here early in the trenches. And
Right.
Watching it grow, and the feeling of creating something from nothing, and watching it go from burning money like crazy every month to watching individual markets become EBITDA positive, and then cash flow positive, and then watching the whole company make that transition. It's just, there's no other career like it that I can think of.
Yeah, it's such a fast-paced, cool environment. The marketing guy in me says, "Hey, you made the wrong decision. You should have been in a marketing agency." But I think it was a great decision for you because it led to such an awesome career in with startups. And startups, I think that term has become kind of perverted in the time, or I don't know if that's the right word, but corrupted, I guess, over the years, because everybody thinks they're a startup now. And it's like, just because you started a business doesn't make you a startup. Do you mind kind of delineating that for us of like what actually a startup qualifies as?
Yeah. So that's funny. I mean, if you and I opened a nail salon and it was our first month of business, are we a startup? I mean, technically, right. Yeah, because it's a new business. We don't have any customers. We don't,
because we started up.
Yeah, we started up. and then, then there's small businesses that, are, restaurants, nail salons and all that. And then there's, I think the sexy startup that everybody wants to be part of is a tech startup of some kind. But it's, the last two businesses I've been in are technology companies. We do cool stuff with machine learning and have a, intellectual property and, do some cool things, but they're also sort of transactional businesses, and they're not going to have that, when people talk about startup, they think of something that a venture capitalist would invest in, and that just, they're looking for that hockey stick growth and all that. And that's, sort of the Silicon Valley kind of thing versus, if you have an architecture firm or a nail salon or similar to what I do, you can be technically you are a startup, but if you're in this band and you're not looking at that exponential growth, and you're not looking at even M&A activity or going in to raise money from private equity, then you're a small business, and small businesses can grow organically. They could grow other ways, but and so I've been on both sides of it. I've been in user-driven through startups that we're not going to make any money unless we get that exponential growth. And then I've been in the side that's just to grind it out from retail or from technology that I am now. So, but whether you're a technical startup or just a new business that's just started, there's a lot of similarities in that you're both trying to figure out your processes, how to do things, how to best service the customer, how to stand out from your competition, how to make money. So yeah, there's ones that are going to have great returns that people invest in, and then there's ones that are, probably can be more of a slog. But in my world, I'd still call them startups. I don't, it makes the owners feel better.
Right. Yeah. It's kind of more of like a status thing, I feel like.
Yeah.
Well, and I want to just ask you this because, especially in our world, right? A lot of the people who are listening to this show were agency owners, or we were a coach or something, right? And we're listening to this show going, okay, well, I didn't get venture capital funding. I'm bootstrapping this, and I bootstrapped it to $500,000 a year. But I'm just kind of curious your take on this, because if you're bootstrapped, and I'm just going to delineate this, right? So like as a tech startup, right, you're getting all of this funding from a VC or something, right? So the first year or two of your life is like begging people to give you fat chunks of cash, right? Then you get $10 million and you've got to hire a CFO to manage that for you so that the cash doesn't go away or it doesn't just disappear. But then what happens is 99% of the time, they're blaming it on the CFO because there's no money left in the company went under, right? But then on the flip side of the coin, you have the people like us, right, who are those agency owners who are bootstrapped and everything. How should we be seeking capital to put ourselves in a position and then using that capital to actually come out successful on the other end of things?
Yeah. So agency, that's a tough one. I mean, you're not going to get a venture cap. You're not going to get VC attention for an agency because it's not going to have that exponential growth. They're gambling, hoping to hit 1 out of 20, and the 1 out of 20 has to pay for all the ones that tanked. And you're just, as an agency, you're not going to grow like that. Private equity. So we could get really deep down both. I mean, I could get really deep down these because this is the world I live in. So you'll have to reel me in if I go too deep. But
that's what we're here for.
There's two things to look at. One is private equity and one is debt financing. So, and I've, the last couple of companies I've done have had some of both. Debt financing, going to your bank is tough because unless you have certain, you meet certain standards, that they're going to want personal guarantees from you as a founder, and the entire management team, the business. They'll want personal guarantees on the loan. So if the business goes under, you're not only responsible for, where you are right now, but you also have to repay the debt. So that can be a tricky situation. But banks are risk averse. They're different than what private equity or, someone doing mezzanine financing, or even what your, friends and family would do in an angel round. So I guess if I'm specifically talking to agencies that have truly bootstrapped, that are not coming from a trust fund or great wealth that they have in their background, you figure out, so the time to get money in for agencies is not when you have a minimum viable product. It's not when you have forecasts that show, hey, I'm on a path to profitability. You're not going to get anybody interested in putting money into you until you actually are profitable, and until you've shown you can do whatever it is that your organization does and you can perform well. I think that if you are organically growing and you've stabilized the business, this is a great time for someone like me to come in. And I kind of thrive in this startup to scale up area where you say, okay, what could we do now to really grow this business more quickly? And I don't care if you're a nail salon, a car wash, an architecture firm, if you've got your processes down and you're doing things well, and you could replicate what you're doing on a bigger level, then you've got something to sell to a private equity firm. So if you say, I'm in an ad agency, and in this city, there are, maybe there's the 2 or 3 top big agencies in the city, but then there's a lot of boutique firms that are probably, they don't have any economies of scale. And, there's maybe your market, and maybe there's nearby markets where you could, if you can make the pitch that you can do what it is you do and scale it up and replicate it, you could, that's when you could reach out to PE and say, hey, I'm a consolidator. Here's why. I've got great processes. I've got great margins. I've got a great finance team that looks at it. We know the metrics to measure. We're a consolidator. Then you could go to a PE and they might get interested. And that's when you start building out a plan for what your growth is going to look like there. But if you're grinding it out and you're bootstrapping and you're just organically growing, it's kind of, you eat what you kill,
Right. That's kind of the world we live in with agencies, I guess. So the reason I asked that question, I'm going to kind of frame it this way, right? Is I constantly talk against this for agencies and startups and stuff, right? The things that we typically spend money on as agencies is we're trying to hire coaches and join group coaching programs and buy courses and things like that. So a lot of our revenue goes into that. But having gone that route, I would say that is not the route you should be going first, because I do think you need a coach, but you can get that by starting a podcast. I'm just going to throw that out there. Start a podcast, you're going to get plenty of free coaching. And a lot of times you can actually, some of those people just say, I like you, I want to coach you, and you can get a coach for free. So it's fantastic. But the big problem I see that we run into is we get caught in these like, well, I've got to make my brand look better. I've got to do all these different things that we've been kind of preached to, when in all reality, like what you're kind of talking about is like that money really should be reinvested back into revenue generating activities, like direct revenue generating activities. When I finally realized that in my own company, I have completely stopped buying group coaching programs or courses or things like that, because it just overcomplicates the process. When I could just hire an agency, they get me X amount of results, it solves a problem. So
yeah,
go ahead.
Well, no, I actually, you go ahead.
So I look at that though, and I say, as an agency, what are kind of those first few things that we should be looking at as far as where money should be put in order to increase that? Because like you said, like I love the tagline that you sent to me, right? It's like how to prepare your business for hyper growth. And to me, my mind is going, where is the money going to enable that hyper growth?
Sure. So as someone who's bootstrapped a business, it's hard to think about anything else when you're worried about how you're going to make payroll, how you're going to pay rent the next time. So, those early stages where whether you're fully self-funded or whether you have a friends and family round or whatever it is, you're looking at your burn rate and you're trying to reduce that and bring in the business enough that you can offset your expenses. So I think before you're doing any training or coaching or marketing, whatever grassroots methodology you're using to bring your revenue in, you want to be as lean as possible. And this is where founders a lot of times are giving away equity in the company in lieu of pay because they can't afford what they need. You're wearing your friends out with favors, and but I think that whether it is from what you invested initially in the company or from the income from the company, you need enough of a runway that you're not, that every deal you try to close, you're not thinking, I've got to pay the utility bill in the background.
Right.
So sort of having whatever that runway is, that's step one, is have your runway of cash. It at least gives you 3 months to breathe easy and really focus on the business and not be limited by, you have to make whatever deal because you're desperate for income. So, have that base there. And then moving from that, it's, presumably before you started the business, what your addressable market is, you might have a few leads of customers you can bring in, but you you can't do anything once your product is nailed down, you can't do anything without customers or users or whatever the case may be. So step one in the plan has got to be to, whether it's a good marketing plan or a salesperson, depending on what it is, or it's you out there pounding the pavement, buying lead lists or whatever the case is, you've got to figure out how to get your sales funnel going. So that is where the first investment is. And then, as that's happening, and depending on what product it is you're providing and what you're provisioning, then you can start focusing on improving operations. But in those early days, you're going to cowboy your way through it. You bring on these customers and you're going to be sure that you're servicing them. And until you get that super fast growth, you can do kind of a white glove concierge sort of approach to it. And you know what it is you do in your business, what your customers want, and you're kind of going above and beyond because you want to steal them away from whoever else they were using. So you can do that cowboy solution approach early on, but as you grow and as that sales funnel and pipeline is shored up, then you can work on your operations. Then you become more efficient, and then you become better and faster at providing your service, and you can do it less expensively, so that you can reinvest that money again and again to keep growing.
Right. I love that. Well, and I have to highlight this because even with my story, right? When we were starting our first company, I was in college. People were telling me, oh yeah, so if you really want to commit to business, you've got to have money. So pull from your 401k, or maybe get a second mortgage on your home, or do this. And I'm sitting here going, dude, I'm like 22 years old, 21 years old. I have none of those things. I literally have nowhere to pull from. I have a credit card I have a $10,000 limit on my card. And I've already used $3,000 of that just learning how to do what I want to do in business. And I remember, for me, the solution always seemed to be, I was getting promoted all these ads of like, oh, I should buy a course or whatever, and I'd buy the next thing, when if I had just been coached on what you just said, right? The first thing is invest in getting that sales funnel. Like, it's a predictable revenue system. If you don't have sales, there's no need for a website. There's no need for all these other dumb things that you're going to spend 10,000 hours building or doing if you don't have a deal coming through the door. So I love that you make that, hey, number one. And then you kind of mentioned, I'm just kind of delineating this for people, or aligning this for people. So you said invest first in building a sales funnel. And then the second thing you said was improving operations. Can you expound on that?
Yeah. So nobody goes into business thinking, I'm going to create the most efficient back office operations anyone's ever seen. They go into business because of the product, of what they're going to provide to their customers. So, and everybody, I've seen it time and again, those first customers are gold, and you're so happy to have them, and you're bending over backwards to make them happy and to provide exactly what they want. And then you're like going above and beyond, and doing free stuff just because you want those evangelists early on. And nothing wrong with that. I think that's actually a great approach. But once you have a stable of customers and that steady pipeline, and you look back, you realize, depending on what you're provisioning or how you're doing it, like maybe you were just managing all of the jobs you had to do in a spreadsheet or something, or in a Word doc, or shared, something on SharePoint that you're looking out, and you realize you're reinventing the wheel every time you bring on a new customer, and how inefficient you are. And you start thinking about all your time, where as the founder, you end up, you're out there doing the sales, and you're actually doing billable hours, or provisioning the service, providing the service. And then you've got to go behind and invoice it. And then, oh yeah, by the way, you've got to pay the bills, and you've got to track your financials. And it's just such a mess. And when you look back at it, and you're kind of catch as catch can as they come in. So when you stabilize and have that income, it's time to look. It's, no entrepreneur is going to do this. It's probably part of the reason 90% of them are entrepreneurs, but it's almost like an ISO 9000 audit, which is just sounds horrible and dreadful, but it's you look at what your business does and where the roadblocks are and who the gatekeepers are and what things are inefficient, and you step back and you can apply every customer that you bring in to that process, and you think, okay, this is what I need to do. I need to get out of these 3 different spreadsheets where I'm tracking stuff. And, whether it's, you've got a friend who's a developer you can lean on to, give you a good deal on building some kind of API to connect some systems, or a better way of, just a little web interface for something to track. You start thinking that, and then that frees up your time to, like, just as you would reinvest capital from the business, you reinvest your time in what matters, and keep streamlining that. And that really all getting that foundation right, so that then you are ready, if whether you're going to a bank and you have to provide more clear financials, you're going to a private equity group, you've got this foundational piece in place, and you show not only are you good at whatever your product is at delivering that, but you're good at the back office and you're good at business. That's when you're going to get the confidence or in someone to invest in you.
Yeah. And that's, like you said, it's kind of the thing that nobody really wants to do, but you're literally like speaking my story. And I love this because we've built multiple companies at this point, but with this company, we're at about 750,000 a year in revenue. And we kind of came to this point where, like you said, we have all these customers, and some of them that we've had for a year and a half now, from like right when we really started this company, we're still doing things for them that we haven't done for other clients in over a year. And they're paying us less than existing clients. And I remember just kind of looking back at that about 4 months ago going, we do not have like a standard operating procedure in this company. Like, we'll do anything if it pertains to their podcast, and about, I want to say 3 to 6 months ago, we really started hammering that down. And I thought it was going to take a lot of time, but I remember us just sitting down and writing out like a workflow, just saying, okay, when a customer requests an order, let's just call it that, what happens? And how much time is spent on each of those tasks? It took me 20 minutes to write it down. I remember just seeing that made me realize, oh, if we just change 2 things, 3 things, that's going to flow so much simpler. It's not going to cost us any more money. In fact, it'll save us more money, and the process is much smoother for the client. And just doing that, and I've gotten so addicted to setting up processes in my business. It's like my partners don't really love it because that's all I'm doing is building systems, right? And as I love that you bring that, I was like, hey, build that sales funnel, then focus on the operations. What would you recommend once you kind of have both of those things in place, right? Because a lot of the people listening here are probably at that stage where the systems are getting pretty well optimized.
Yeah. So it depends on, there's some things that, in order to provide the kind of service you want, you're going to be a white glove small operation. Some founders think, I have started this business, I can control this, I can handle X number of clients per month, per day, whatever their metric is. And I don't want to get bigger than that. I've figured out, if I get up to this level of customers, at this level of income, I can take this much out of the company, and I'm good with that. I get to own my own business. I call the shots. I love what I do. And then it's just a matter of keeping to trim those efficiencies. But even business owners who maybe they don't have an immediate plan to sell, that I've worked with, they always know that, somewhere down the line, that there could be an exit opportunity. So I think you always have to plan as if you're going to sell. So
right,
even if you're not going to go to a private equity firm, and you're not looking to buy the 2 small boutique agencies down the street and the one town over, run the business as such, because you're going to get more efficient that way, and you're going to be able to squeeze out more money out of the business, even if you just stay flat in where your revenue is. And the more you can streamline and automate on the back office side, the more time you can focus on doing what you love and what you're there for.
right.
Nobody likes to sit down and calculate hours and do payroll or pay vendors, or, generating invoices for a founder can be fun, because at least then you're thinking, man, this is going to be income coming. But yeah, so I don't, but then conversely, if you really are looking to grow the business and try to get some kind of exponential growth and get a multiple over what you have, then it's time to really evaluate what you have, put together a business plan that is not just, where we are today, it's where we are going to be in 2 to 5 years and how we're going to get there, and building out financial models. And even if you're not going to raise money, it's good for you to see that. Is to think about this year, we've got inflation for the first time in 20 years. I mean, factoring in stuff like that, if your materials that you're provided, if your rates are going up, things to think about when you're planning the business. So it's it's kind of like doing your taxes. It's a necessary evil, but if you have done good forecasting for your business, based on where you are, and you can see, can I afford to hire that admin? Can I afford to hire another marketing person here or whatever? So I think really just nailing down the efficiencies and starting to run your small business like, not like a mom and pop, but like a larger business. So you talked about trying to avoid classes, and you and I are fortunate enough that we have finance backgrounds. But if you haven't, it's worth learning how to read a P&L. And I don't know, probably most startup businesses are using QuickBooks, but they're probably, maybe they've got a bookkeeper, maybe they just jam some stuff in there once a quarter and then hand it over to their accountant and hope for the best at the end of the year. But QuickBooks, there's a reason that it's in, just about every small business in the world. It's because it does have functionality that could really expand for someone who's not a finance person. You can start thinking about your balance sheet, your income statement, your cash flow, and start planning the business that way.
Yeah. And I would actually completely agree. I think there's a time and a season for it, because like, even for me, I've been doing my MBA in the evenings, and I think it's hugely valuable. And it's not because, I'm going to use it to get a job or anything like that. It's helped me to understand how my company runs and how to scale a business. And I would actually recommend it for everybody to actually go get a real actual education, even if it's just something you're doing in the nighttime, so that you can become an affluent business owner, so you can grow multi-million-dollar companies instead of just, $1 million company. So Glenn, but first off, let me tell everybody, Glenn wrote a book. If you've been loving this, what we've been talking about here, he's given some really solid, actionable steps today. And I hope all of you will look at that and apply it. But he has a book called Deep Finance, which you can get pretty much anywhere, right? It's basically like on Amazon and everywhere, right, Glenn?
Oh yeah. Amazon, Target, Barnes and Noble.
Love it.
Anywhere you buy books.
Anywhere you buy books. So go grab that book. It's called Deep Finance by Glenn Hopper. So guys, make sure you go check that out. And you can also check out Glenn at glennhopper.com. And Glenn, just to kind of finish this one off, can you give us one final parting piece of guidance?
Yeah, let me think. I'm gonna go metaphorical on my last.
Let's do it.
On my last. So, and it's not going to be on just when you're starting a business. It's going to be on the area where I usually come into a business. So, I read something a few years ago that I thought was, and I wish I'd saved it, because I'm going to butcher the details of the story, but I think it was at Berkeley in California. They had some new construction, and instead of pouring the sidewalks around the construction and then just directing people, this is where you walk to get to this building or whatever, the architect that designed this building said, let's not pour the sidewalks, let's just have open field, and people will walk the way that makes the most sense, and they will carve a path. And then wherever the people carve a path, we're going to go back and put the sidewalks in. So this really stuck with me, and I don't know why, but it seemed so natural and unforced. And I think about that in business all the time. So I talk about founders are amazing people to have the creativity and the energy to create something from nothing. And I think, and I've been a victim of this myself on a couple of businesses I've founded. When you start with limitations in mind, it can really hurt the product. So I think you need to have that blue sky business formation, whiteboarding everything, and everything's perfect. If you've got the why and you've got the product and you've got the thing you're passionate about, focus on that first, and then start, as you bring on customers, as you bring on users, whatever it is you're doing, exactly what you did, look at the paths you're taking and then turn the paths that organically came out of it into the processes for the business. And that ends up making way more sense than trying to develop processes out of the gates. So for whatever that's worth, that's my advice. That's go first with your cool product, follow the natural path to provision and deliver that service to your customers, and then automate from there.